Hi, welcome to the West Coast Urban Wildlife webinar on skunks. Now, skunks are a common urban wildlife species and often not a very welcome one, but today we're going to talk a little bit more about the benefits of having skunks in your area, as well as different ways that you can work to coexist with them. Now, skunks are about the size of a small to medium house cat, depending on where they live. They have a very large, bushy tail that trails behind them and will be raised upright in a defensive stance if they're threatened. Their body is dark black and has stark white stripes down their back, and this also plays into their defensive mechanism with their tail. They can make themselves look very large and scary to a predator with this coloring and size. Now, skunks are actually omnivores, so they eat mostly insects, fruits, and nuts, as well as seeds, but they do eat some rodents, mostly mouse nests or rat nests or rodents that have already died. And of course, skunks are very well known for their stinky defense mechanism. We all know a story of somebody who has been sprayed by a skunk or has a dog sprayed by a skunk. And so we'll talk a little bit about that and how we can avoid this situation. Now, what are some of the benefits of skunks in our area? Skunks are one of my favorites to have in the area because they provide amazing bug and pest control. There's so many different grubs and beetles and such that are preying on our plants, biting our ankles, biting our dogs or cats. And these are some of the skunk's favorite snacks. They like to dig these things up. They have great front claws that they can dig deep and find bugs. And they also use their nose a lot for hunting. So they're able to find these tiny little bugs and pick them out and save us from the trouble of them. As I mentioned before, they're also known for raiding mouse and rat nests, and also squirrel nests, different rodent things like that. They can dig deep into these nests, and so that acts as great pest control because many of us homeowners do not enjoy having those animals around us. They also contribute some to disease control by eating carrion, which is usually dead animals. And so there's often diseases associated with that skunks can metabolize and remove from the environment. So they also play a role that way. So they're great companions to have in your backyard. They're beneficial to us and our gardens, and so they're great to have around. However, if you do find yourself in a conflict with a skunk, usually it's not a pleasant one. Most often, skunks come into issues with people because people, accidentally sneak up on them, and it's usually a surprise meeting on both sides. If you ever find yourself confronting a skunk face to face with them, the main thing you just want to watch their body language. The last thing they want to do is spray. That is their very last defense mechanism. It takes them up to a week to regenerate that spray, and so they want to avoid using that as much as possible. If you look at this photo on the left, this skunk is facing directly at his threat. His front feet are outstretched, though you can't really see them as well in the grass, and they will stomp their feet. They'll stomp repetitively as a way to kind of threaten and warn off their threat. And as you can see, his big tail is upright in the back and all fluffed out, and that makes him look very large and scary. And so this is usually his first response to a threat, is to stomp, get his tail upright. The second response might be to kind of turn his rear end a little bit towards them, almost as a threat, like I might spray. And the third response, unfortunately, is often the spray. This can go very far, but like I did say earlier, it is their last line of defense. They don't like doing it. It's not fun for them, and it's not fun for us. So if you watch their body language and also let them be, if you sneak up on them and surprise them, just slowly back away. Don't stop to take a photo or anything like that. Just back away, let them be, and most likely they'll amble on and continue to do their thing and let you do yours, and everyone will be fine. Now, if there are skunks that are dedicated to living in your backyard and you don't necessarily want them there, you don't want them interacting with pets and such, there are some easy, humane ways to get them to move on. One of the easiest is to install motion-activated floodlights in your yard. Skunks do not like being in the spotlight like that. They prefer to forage under nightfall or in shaded areas. And so these floodlights will discourage them from hanging out in the area. They're also great at discouraging other kind of wildlife like raccoons, opossums, coyotes, etc. So they're a great investment for your home. The second thing would be to secure any possible food sources. And these might not be things that you would consider a food source, but that are to other wildlife. These, for example, would be trash cans, compost piles, unsecured gardens, spilled birdseed, things like that. If you can identify these food sources and either secure them or remove them, you will most likely be encouraging these skunks to move on and find another place to forage. Related to this is to amend your outdoor pet feeding schedule. If you are feeding neighborhood cats or outdoor dogs, try to limit that time of the food being down to a few hours each day. Put it down, allow the pets to eat, and then pull up the food. The longer that you leave that food out, the more likely you are to invite neighborhood wildlife like skunks, opossums, coyotes, to help themselves to that food. And while it's not great for them to be hanging around your house, it's also not very healthy for them. So by picking those up and limiting the time that the food is down, you're helping both yourself and the wildlife. And finally, using exclusion methods to prevent denning. Often there are issues with people having skunks that make their dens under a deck or in a shed. The main thing you want to be careful of here is that you're checking to make sure there's no babies, that it's not a mom with a den full of babies. In this case, if there are babies, you can um, put on like a floodlight out there 24/7 or put a radio playing loud music. These are just different things that you can do to make it very uncomfortable for the skunk, and she'll likely pick up her babies and find another den. You can also consider leaving her there for a few weeks, and eventually she will take her babies elsewhere. And baby skunks are really cute to watch, so you would just get a nice, adorable free show in your backyard. If there aren't babies, if it's just a single adult skunk that's made its home under your deck, you can look into exclusion methods like are typically creating a one-way door so the skunks can exit but cannot re-enter. So those are just some different ways that you can encourage skunks to move on. Now, one of the main things that people like to do is they like to try and trap skunks and relocate them somewhere else. Um, Firstly, skunks are very much scent-oriented hunters. They can't find their food very well visually. They do not have great eyesight, and so by picking them up and moving them to a brand new spot away from the places they know where to forage, they know where to find water. Most animals do not survive relocation. So a lot of people think that it's a humane way to get rid of a skunk problem, but it's actually not so humane because it usually does not end well for the animal. In addition, it's not particularly effective. There are resources available, whether you know it or not. There's something that the animals are eating there that they're thriving on. And so if you remove an animal like a skunk, you're essentially creating a vacuum for some other animal to use those resources. It might be another skunk, it might be a coyote, a possum, raccoon, all sorts of animals will eat the same types of things. So the best bet is to, check out some of those suggestions that I just spoke about on neighborly ways to ask them to leave, and see if there's a way that you can coexist with the skunk prior to taking any sort of action of relocation. Now, how can you support skunks? As I said before, skunks are very scent oriented. They do not rely on their vision much, and that can leave them at risk of being struck by cars and being attacked by dogs. So when you're driving at night, slow down, keep your lights on, especially around springtime because skunks are often roaming, looking for family members. And if you do have a large backyard that you let your dogs out into at night, just take a peek, turn on the lights before you let anyone out. If they do encounter a skunk, it's not going to be a great situation for anyone involved. So the best thing you can do is just take a quick peek, look outside, make sure there's no skunks walking around out there before you let your dogs out. If you want any additional information on skunks or other urban wildlife, you can check out our website at westcoasturbanwildlife.weebly.com. There's lots of great resources and information there for you to see. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you learned a little bit about the skunks living in your backyard.